Over recent weeks and months, alderman and mayoral candidate Gabrielle Hansen has been facing controversies. In part, she spread unfounded claims about the Covenant shooting, vocally opposed a Juneteenth celebration at the airport, and was escorted by men her fellow aldermen have called Nazis.
Hey everybody, it's Troy. Hey listen, Franklin, Tennessee is this really wealthy suburb of Nashville, and it's an incredibly Republican, red, Trump-friendly community. Donald Trump won Franklin by 26 points in 2020. So just a big sort of Trump-friendly area. Well, they just had municipal elections for mayor and city council, aldermen, all that. And the MAGA slate of candidates got absolutely crushed in that election, and they were losing to moderate Republicans. Let's not kid ourselves. There weren't any Democrats in this race. Even though they're nonpartisan races, they do have party affiliations, the candidates do. So let's not kid ourselves. They're not running against Democrats, but they're losing against moderate, traditional Republican candidates in a very, very, very Trump-friendly area. So it's absolutely fascinating. The candidate for mayor, the MAGA candidate for mayor, is Gabrielle Hansen, and she just had an epic scandal-ridden campaign. She could not keep it together, and she got her ass handed to her. She only got 20% of the vote. Her opponent, who is the incumbent mayor, who's a moderate, sort of more traditional Republican, not a Trump guy, is Ken Moore. Ken Moore got 80% of the vote of Franklin, Tennessee for mayor over this MAGA candidate, Gabrielle Hansen. Now, as I said, Gabrielle Hansen, who is this MAGA candidate for mayor, has this crazy scandal-ridden history. And apparently the people of Franklin didn't want to have anything to do with this woman. She made bizarre, unfounded comments about the Nashville school shooting that really upset a lot of the victims' families and the people that were affected by that tragedy, just making really conspiracy-driven, off-color remarks about the Nashville school shooting. She was sending letters, threatening letters to the Nashville International Airport after they had contributed some funding for a Juneteenth celebration. She was trying to strike down Juneteenth. As an alderman, she tried to block a local pride festival, a local pride parade. She tried to stop that from happening, only to have the local news network, this local TV news network, uncover a photo of her husband attending a pride parade in Chicago wearing a Speedo. So he got busted for that. But the biggest thing was she had these weird connections to these local neo-Nazi groups that would act like as her bodyguards. She refused to condemn this Nazi group that would show up to her campaign events. She started retaliating against the media after this stuff with her husband, and she started not letting media into her campaign events. She stopped letting media cover her campaign, essentially. But she continued to be escorted to these events by these neo-Nazi groups, and she was refusing to condemn them. At one point, she said she needed them to protect her from Antifa. So apparently this MAGA candidate for mayor, Gabrielle Hansen, thought that she was being threatened by some imaginary group called Antifa that doesn't exist. And for that reason, she needed neo-Nazi bodyguards.
Thank you, sir.
Tonight, some of her colleagues have had enough.
If this had not been election time, I can guarantee you, Alderman Hansen, we would not be doing this. We would have already been you would already have been censured by this board, maybe multiple times.
At least 3 other aldermen agreed Hansen should be censured or shouldn't be elected to public office again.
Franklin is better than this. No one could have seen this embarrassment that we would have to suffer through as a community because of you.
Creating fear and intimidation, spreading volatile messages, and potentially facilitating threats to our community members is beyond the pale.
It's embarrassing to end up on HBO, to end up on MSNBC, and not for the good stuff. And it's all traced down to one source.
Can I get a statement now?
After these blistering comments, Alderman Hansen responded and explained why these men, who have been identified as white nationalists, were at a recent forum.
This is exactly the seeds that you sowed, and your harvest is now here. And they were here because they are an anti-Antifa group. And the dark web is showing massive Antifa activity. And I don't denounce any of my clients. I have a black client, a lesbian client, a Muslim client. I have Brad Lewis as a client. I'm a realtor. I'm not going to denounce anybody their right to be whatever it is that they want to be whether I agree with what they do in their personal life or not.
That neo-Nazi group later vandalized the offices of a local paper that was critical of Hansen, critical of her campaign. So just absolutely creepy ties to neo-Nazi groups, using them as, muscle or threats or whatever. Just really, really, really bad campaign. Towards the end, it just spiraled out of control. She got caught for all kinds of things. She got caught fabricating stuff on social media, just a mess. But she got shown the door by the citizens of Franklin, Tennessee, only getting 20% of the vote. Her opponent, the more moderate Republican incumbent, got 80% of the vote. So Franklin voters sending a clear message that they don't want crazy conspiracy theory-ridden, fear rhetoric, MAGA tactics. Also, there was a slate of MAGA candidates for aldermen. So they have 4 at-large seats on their city council, city aldermen. And there were 3 MAGA candidates, 3 slate of MAGA candidates, Jeff Feldman, Patrick George, and Gary Moore, and they all lost as well. They all got just blown out, each covering somewhere around 30% of the vote, where their more traditional Republican opponents got 70% of the vote. It was kind of across the board. The vote numbers were kind of all the same for each of those candidates because, again, they're at-large seats. So it's the same people voting for all those candidates. Each one got about 30% of the vote. So MAGA Republican candidates, Trump candidates losing huge in this very, very Trump-friendly area, one of the most Trump-friendly areas in the country. The MAGA candidates went down hard against more traditional Republican candidates. Doesn't spell good news for the candidacy of Donald Trump in 2024 if he's losing his people in these very, very MAGA areas. Maybe the MAGA brand is starting to waver, and people, even in the deep red South, even in deep red MAGA territory all across the country, are starting to see that maybe sane, competent leadership is the way to go, and having lunatic fringe fascists that pal around with neo-Nazis is not a good idea. Even at the city level, even at the municipal level, putting those people in charge is not a good idea. Doesn't bode well for a presidential candidate with 91 criminal indictments. So we'll see how that goes. MAGA brand may be wavering. For MeidasTouch, this is Troy. Remember, smash that subscribe button to keep supporting independent media, and head on over to MeidasTouch.com, the place to get all the breaking news of the day. Head on over to MeidasTouch.com to see this story and a tons more. Thanks all.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.